I think the number one place that I would start is a multi-generational, creative system for redressing economic injustice, right? All my cards on the table, I am for reparations. I am for a multi-generational, creative system for redressing economic injustice. I don't think that if every Black person had educational equality, I don't think we would see much change, right? Because going back to the Malibu story, the assets, the resources are already allocated. So you can give every kid in the world, every Black kid in the world a PhD. The houses and the steps that they would use that PhD to, the things that they would use that PhD to earn and to gain are already allocated. And they don't have a real way of ever getting any of those resources, right? I think time, if I had all the time in the world, I think I would make us stop, right? Coronavirus has made us stop, and I would make us all talk to each other, right? And really understand, and not in a tweet, but really understand what it means like to be undocumented in this country, to what it means like to be LGBTQ in this country, what it means like, what it feels like to be a Black woman in this country, right? To really understand as best as we can those experiences. And that is a ton of work. And that is an amount of work that will not go away, and that frankly, you'll work on for the rest of your life. But if we are all doing it, I heard when I was a kid, more hands make light work, that if we are all doing it, our collective effort gives us a better shot. And influence, I don't know, I'm hopeful, and I think this is part of being an educator, right? I'm hopeful that, you know, these 16 people, or how, I guess, well, wow, there's more people, I guess. Wow, we're like 25, y'all. There's a lot of people in here, 26, right? I think that this conversation, right, if we have it with another group of people, that's an exponential function, right? There's no reason why we can't stay and remain vigilant in creating a society that is just, right? And I think, nobody asked me this, but I'll just say it. One of the things, I think it goes back into the mythology of the United States, is that just like this idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, just like this idea of we don't talk about politics or religion at the table, we've bought into this idea of equality. And what I want to be very clear about what I mean by this. There are certain rights that should be inalienable. There should be certain access to opportunities and resources and assets that should be evenly and justly distributed. If some abstract concept named equality is what we're after, one that doesn't help people actually do anything that is sacrificial in terms of changing the system. And then two, it quite literally strips the beauty and the creativity and the unique gifts that we all bring to the table away from them. What I'm much more interested in is this higher level, noble idea, creative idea of what does human flourishing look like? What does it look like for every American to thrive, right? Because we can all be equal, right? But what does it look like for America to flourish, for every single of the 330 million Americans to flourish, to thrive? That is a much more interesting, hopeful, enduring, complicated puzzle to work on versus like, I'm just going to keep us all equal. I don't really know what that means, but we're going to be equal. Everybody's going to be equal. Like, right? Again, should there be access to rights? Absolutely. Should those rights be defended to the death, right? Should there be access to opportunities and resources? Absolutely. I'm not talking about rights or assets. What I'm talking about is, do we have the fortitude and the creativity to create a system where all of us thrive? That's a question that is yet to be answered, and we'll have to see that. All right, Black Lives Matter. Let's do it. Historically, it's really important to understand that Black Lives Matter is a confederation of folks with no individual leader who has uh, is leading the movement. It is a multi-generational, multi-ethnic, cross-political movement that demands and affirms the sanctity of uh, Black lives and um, understands intimately the history of this country and understands if Black lives will be valued and just valued, we will have a chance at living into the dreams and have a chance of living into the promise of the country. And I think one of the things that I posted something the other day, beautiful sort of retort from one of the women in Minneapolis, I believe, who was just talking about, she equated the Black experience in this country to playing Monopoly and 401 times around the board, where every time you got your $200 to pass go, that money was taken back. And when you purchased Boardwalk, that money was taken back. And I think more than anything, I think this is why it is so important for every American to know Black history, because I'm glad that Tulsa's getting some love and Watchmen are watching those things. But Black people have always asked in this country, and it makes me so proud of where I come from, is that it would be quite reasonable to fight and say, no, you can't do this. But Black people have always said, just stop messing with me, right? And then we, of our own accord, will create our own systems. We will create and develop and do our own thing. But there's never been a period where Black people have not been under constant persecution, right? You look at the Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? You look at the Rosewood neighborhood in Florida, right? You look at what's happening now with some of the more high profile activists in Black Lives Matter, right? One of the things that I was actually concerned about in this call, right, is that someone would Zoom bomb it, right? You could quickly, easy run a search on Google, find out what this call was about, and then somebody would come in and try to disrupt that call. You've seen that data, right? That like Zoom bombing is a thing. That is one part of a constellation of attacks that have been happening since the beginning of this country, right? And we can sort of be tempted to dismiss those things, but the reality is that there are constant attacks on Black people and people of color. And I think as white allies and other people, to have people quite literally put your body in between that attack is appreciated, right? One of the things that is happening when I'm marching with folks is that organizers will ask white people to quite literally put them, as we're walking down the street, quite literally put white people on the outside, just knowing, being strategic about the system, knowing that cops, people who are pissed off in traffic, somebody who's late to wherever they're trying to get to is much less likely to run over a 5'3" white woman with a Black Lives Matter sign than they are a 6'4" Black dude with a Black Lives Matter sign, right? Those people put their lives on the line. They put their body in the space so that Black people who are under constant attack for 30 seconds, for the minute it takes to cross the intersection, don't have to deal with yet another interaction. I appreciate the attention to the exhaustion. Black people are fried. We are burnt out. We're done. We're over it. We're angry. We don't have much more in the tank. I identify as African American because when my ancestors have felt like this in the past, they have found deep reservoirs and wells of resilience and resistance, right? We talk about history in a way that rips the humanity away from people's experiences. Imagine right now if somebody came into your home, snatched you, and put you on a cargo ship. And in that cargo ship, for 3 months at a time, you had to watch the other 25 people in this Zoom call defecate themselves, drink their own urine to survive, die of all sorts of pestilence, and then when they arrived, be subjected to the most horrific imaginable torture for 401 years, and never have a break from that. And during that relentless oppression and being told, you got Obama, aren't you happy? That's a break, right? Or at least they're not killing you. That's a break, right? You can go to school with me. Aren't you happy? You can buy a house in my neighborhood. Aren't you happy? Right? Like when you slow down and really look at the humans behind the stories in history. For me, it takes me to that 0 out of 10 and then propels me to a 10 out of 10 because I do have strength and resilience in my blood, right? I am, as Maya Angelou says, I am the hope and the dream of a slave, right? Should it be this way? Absolutely not. Can I get through it? Absolutely. There's no question about it. And I think to answer your question, how do you amplify Black voices in the time? I think that's going to be an individual on case by case basis, and I appreciate and affirm in you the desire to do that. Right? Most folks aren't even thinking at that level. Right? Most folks are still right when you get to work. Most folks are actually pissed off that their latte was venti instead of grande. Right? Like that's actually where most people's brains are at, and the fact that you're thinking at that level about your fellow human beings is admirable. So thank you.